Right, I'll start again. Thank you so much, Ramya, for being our speaker for part 2 of the AWS session with AWS SageMaker and Bedrock. And we are excited to have this hands-on session with members of our AWAAI team. So let's get started. Over to you. Thank you.
Okay, and it's so good to be back here again and seeing some known faces. So thanks for having me here, Uvika and Padmini. So for those who joined for part 1, welcome back. For those who are joining new, yeah, welcome. So let me start sharing my screen. 1 second, and let me know when you start seeing it. Actually, I just, so my old laptop crashed. So I'm just setting up things in my new laptop in my Mac. So, yes, I'm just enabling some security settings for sharing my desktop. So give me 1 minute. Not able to see it yet, right?
Not yet.
No.
Oh, yeah, now.
It's coming. Awesome.
Okay, can you now? Okay, so let me know what you see.
You see
Zoom. Zoom.
Okay, yes, let me switch back. Okay, have it here. Okay, do you see something like a presentation?
Yeah, we see the,
okay,
we see your picture. Yeah,
okay, good.
perfect.
Okay, so we are here for a hands-on session on deploying ML model using SageMaker AI. So I know during my first session, I focused on both Bedrock and SageMaker. So today it's going to be just SageMaker. So we'll go through some processes and machine language modeling, how we do it in SageMaker AI. That's me. Yeah, so I have a decade experience with on cybersecurity. I work more on the cybersecurity side, on cloud side. I work in the Dallas area, work in Cisco, and outside my 9 to 5. I love doing mentoring, so I'm a top 1% mentor on TopMate. I've mentored over 150 professionals so far the past 1.5 years. I'm also run an NGO for individuals with special needs and cognitive disabilities in the Dallas area. So that's pretty much about me. Let me go back to the main content, why we are here. So we are here for the machine language modeling. I just have a couple of slides here. I'm just not gonna go through a lot of slides because today's a workshop and we're almost Friday. So I don't want to go through a boring slides. So just a couple of slides before I kick it off with the workshop. The data science process, basically just covers the machine language pretty much, right? So the entire pipeline of a machine language is getting the data. So based on the use case, the first thing you do is get the data and clean the data. So whichever is not needed, you clean the data. Exploration, and after that comes the exploration and whichever features are really required for setting up the model. It's that's something called a feature engineering. So we go through that. And then comes training the model with the data that you have provided. And then evaluating the model with the data. So once it's trained, you basically test it out if it's working fine. And then comes the evaluation of the model. And if it's still, the testing looks good, the final phase is deployment of the model in production. So this is pretty much the entire life cycle of a machine language model. And that we're going to achieve with SageMaker AI. And using SageMaker AI, it's like, this is kind of like, so basically SageMaker AI provides the full ecosystem where you do the data, your feature engineering, like loading your data sets, you do the feature engineering, and then you do the, the training and the testing of the data, which is part of the model engineering, evaluate the model, and then deploy the model. So this is basically the entire life cycle that can be achieved in SageMaker AI. And for today, we're just going to focus on the training part and the testing part, which is just a 1 hour workshop. So it's just going to be focused on just this part, which is the training the data set and testing the data set and then deploying deploying the model in SageMaker. Workshop. So how it's going to be split, so I'll walk you through the prerequisites. I'm not sure if how many people have an AWS console account. Let me know if you have, like I see like a few of them. If you don't have it, let me know. Yeah, just give me a thumbs up if you have. Just wanted to check how many of them have it. If not, that's fine. The session is going to be recorded anyways, and I will provide the code I'll provide a link to my Google Drive that has the code, so you can just practice it anytime you want. So, but if you have AWS sign-in, yeah, just go ahead and sign into your AWS console. So that's pretty much a prerequisite for the session. So what I'll do is I'll just go through the very basic things that you need. Like if there's anyone who's who's not much familiar with AWS, basic things that you would need to get things set up. So I'll just walk through that for the first 10 minutes. And then we'll start exploring SageMaker AI, like how would you set up a basic resources on SageMaker AI in order to deploy a model. So we'll talk something, so we'll just go through that for like 15-20 minutes, and the next 15 minutes we'll try to import a model, a machine learning model, and then we will split the data set, we'll train and we'll test with the data set, and we'll just do a model prediction. So hopefully we'll be able to complete, but let's see. If we run into any issues, that's fine. I mean, the code is there, so you can just play around with the code anytime and free. So that's gonna be for the workshop. So let's get started. I'll just go through, so AWS console, let me just get started with that. So in case if you don't have an AWS console sign up, so so here you would, if it's just, you're just using, usually if you use an enterprise AWS account, you will not have access to most of the features like Bedrock and SageMaker AI. So I would suggest use a personal account if you have one. In case if you don't have it, sign up in AWS, and it's pretty much very, very straightforward. So all you need is just an email ID. You'll need a credit card details to sign up into AWS. And it's basically AWS does offer like a free services that you can use free for the first 2 months, and after that its charges based on the usage, because it's all deployed in the cloud, so it's based on the usage, the price varies, but for the first 2 months you would see a lot of it would be in free tier. So if here, and in case if you've already signed in, that's good. So I'll just go straight to my session where I've signed into the account. Okay, so here, let me just go AWS. Okay, there is one, yeah, so you will need a code actually. So let me send you a link over in the chat so you can see if, let me know if you're able to access this drive. Where is the chat? Okay. I'll send a link over here. So meeting group chat. Yeah, let me know if you're able to access that link. If not, I might have to, enable some permissions. You're able to access it? Good. Thanks, Eva. Anybody else, if you have any issues, let me know, because that's where the code is. So if you guys are good, I'll just go directly to AWS. Okay, so here when you are signed into AWS, right? So the first time you're signing into AWS, so there are a few things that needs to be kept in mind. One is IAM service, which is where all the access and the permissions are configured. So that's the first route that you would take. That's the first step that you would do is basically go to IAM. So do a search over here. So you will see a bar where you can just type for IAM, okay, and then this will come up. So just go into that link. And this is pretty much for people who are new to AWS, just giving a, just wanted to walk over through this one as well. Then on the left side, you will see users. Okay, so go to users and you will be setting up this users. 1 second, let me just get this out of the side. Okay. So on the users, so it will be blank for you if you're just using it for the first time. So you click on this create user link, and that will take you to some basic details, where you would just put your username. Say, for example, just put RG demo. Just put maybe demo 1. Okay, click on next. Okay, so here comes the most important thing. Okay, so when you're creating the user, the most important thing is attaching the required policies, because if you don't attach the required policies or the permissions, you will see errors like when you're deploying a model or running something in AWS. So if you're using a private account, I would suggest go for the administrator access, because it's just you who's going to access your account. So go for administrator access, click on this, and you would find it in attach policies directly. So you'll find it in there. So just go ahead and create it. So go click on next. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So you would be able to create. So just if you click on create user, so you'll be able to create the user. Let me know if it's okay, or if you see any issues here. I'm just going to cancel it because I have few user accounts anyways. So let me go back to continue. Yeah, so let me go back. So once you set the IAM, right, IAM user, so once your user is all set up, there's something that you would also need to know, which is the S3, which is for people who are not much familiar. It's where you have all the documents stored. So any documents that you will be, say, for example, you have a model, you need to train it with a data set. You have your own data set, custom data set, or another data set that you want to train it with. So you would have to store it in a storage. So AWS offers the S3 bucket. So this is where, so you would go to, save any of the documents that you need for your model training or model deployment. So pretty much what you would do is you just type in S3 here on the search bar. So you would go to this S3 link and it will take you here. I have some buckets already. A bucket is nothing but it's just a storage. It's something like a folder. So here you would create a bucket. So you would create you could just use a general purpose. That's fine. Just use any name that you want. And it's pretty much straightforward. So it has some checkboxes here, block all public access. You don't want your S3 bucket to be accessible to the public. So that's just default. So just accept the defaults and then click on create bucket. So you should be able to create the bucket for it. So these are two very important things that needs to be kept in mind, which is the IAM user and then the bucket, which is for storage, which is used for storage. Okay, let me know if I'm going fast, if you're able to follow, or if it's too fast, let me know. Okay, so I'll just move on to the next one, which is the main thing, which is what we're going to talk about today is SageMaker, right? So once you have your IAM user set up, you have your S3 bucket set up, the next thing you would do is go to SageMaker AI. So just type in SageMaker AI. And you will see this green button here. So just go over here. Okay, so this will take you here. And if you're new to SageMaker AI, this will be totally, you would see this as empty. And the first thing is creating a domain. Okay, so that's the first thing that you would do is creating a domain. Now, what is a domain? Let me click here. I can show you what it is. So what AWS offers, it's very flexible actually. So what it offers is it's kind of a full package. when you create a domain, it's like you're creating like a shared space. If you are working in a team, and you want your environment to be shared with all your team members. So you're working on some model, your other team member would be working on another model. So this is a domain is something like it's a shared environment that you can set up in SageMaker when there are multiple people working on the same project. You could set up for an organization that would be, or you could set up as a single user. So if you see over here, if you see over here on the left side, you see that it comes with a total package kind of thing. It just uses the IAM role that is like a SageMaker full access policy. So it is already integrated. All those policies are already integrated. You don't have to create a new one. But once you create a domain, it comes with all these. So it comes with a role, it comes with the required permissions and policies that you need to deploy a model and to train a model. It also comes with a public internet access, which is like, you don't have to set any specific network in your domain. So it's all done integrated. It comes with a package. It also comes with a SageMaker Studio that we'll just talk about in a bit. And it comes with SageMaker Studio notebooks, Canvas. So we're just going to talk about those things in a bit. So just for now, just think that it's just a shared environment that you're setting up. And this is the first thing that you would do here. So when you go to SageMaker AI, go to SageMaker domain, setup, go for a setup. Now, if you're using a free account, it does, so if you're using a free account, it will only let you set like 2 domains, 1 or less. So since I have domains already set up, it will not let me set up 1 more. So I have 1 set up, but creating a domain is very straightforward. So it is just, you just have to put a name and click on next, and it will create a domain for you in a couple of minutes. So once you have the domain set up, okay, so once you have a domain set up, so you just click on the domain that you have created. And let me know if you want me to wait for a couple of minutes before going to the next step, or if you're good. Okay, so once you have the domain set up, okay, so you'll just click on the domain. And you would go to, so I already have some things configured here because so because it's like I created it already, but you might see something like some fields being empty. So go to the second tab. So once you have the domain created, you open the domain, go to the second tab, and you will land into user profiles. Okay, so that's where you create a user for domain. So imagine like your environment, you can have multiple users sharing your environment. You can have multiple team members working on the same project. So this is where you would create a user for yourself, or the other person would create another user. So this is where everything happens. So click on add user. I already have a user set up, but click on add user. Okay, so once you have it, this one is straightforward as well. So you would just put any default name any custom name that you want for your user. And if you see over here, execution role, you would see the execution role policy already populated. So basically what SageMaker does is it just creates the user with the default execution role. So you don't have to really create policies. There's already a policy set up, and it's already integrated. So you can just use this in case if you want a different policy, you want to create a user, and that you want that user only to say, train the model, but you don't want that user to deploy the model or run the model. So in that case, you can just use you can create a custom role that would just do those kind of permissions. It will only have permissions to deploy, but not delete, something like that. So you can just do that using this create custom role. But for now, just go with a default execution role, and that would be the default thing that comes with, which is execution role SageMaker. So once that is done, click on next. And so you will have the user setup. Let me go back to my domain here. Okay, so let me, I think it's this one, or to figure it out. Okay. Yeah. So once you have the domain created, once you have the user profile created as well, so what you would do is you would see on the right, okay, on the right, you will see a launch button. So this launch button will actually give you a few options, which is the Studio, Canvas, TensorBoard profiler. For now, we'll just focus on mainly on Studio and Canvas for today's session. So what is a Studio and what is a Canvas, right? So SageMaker gives a couple of options for users so Studio is basically kind of an IDE environment. So if you're familiar with Visual Studio IDE, it's something similar to that. So where you can, it's all a whole IDE environment platform that it lets it lets the user to basically train the data set. So whatever life cycle that we just saw in the slide a few minutes ago, like where you create the data set, you do like a feature engineering on the data set, and then you train the model, you test the model. So everything or the entire pipeline can be done with a studio. Okay, so that is and this is one of the main features of SageMaker AI. And the second thing is Canvas. So that is Canvas is also a very important feature, and I will go through that in a bit. So just know that Canvas does the same thing, but it provides like almost a no code or less code kind of thing. But it basically achieves what Studio does. But there are some limitations, but it is pretty much no code. So say, for example, in your team, you have like a BA, you have a business analyst, and you have a data scientist, a data engineer. So what a person who doesn't want to code, like maybe a business analyst can use a Canvas to maybe deploy a model. Because it's pretty much code free. And so once the model is deployed, so it will create an endpoint basically, so they can give the model to a data scientist or a data engineer to further process the model. So it's just different options that SageMaker provides based on your requirement. And if you want to code, if you're into coding, so you could use Studio. And if you're not into coding much, you can just use Canvas, and that pretty much will help you do the same thing, basically deploy the model and all that using Canvas. And it's a powerful feature that SageMaker offers. So for today, we'll focus on Studio. So from where we are just going to train the model and deploy it. There are also a couple of things I want to talk about in the same page. So you would see there's certain very useful features that SageMaker offers. If you see over here if you go down, there's something called Jumpstart. Then this is something that I covered a little bit on my first session, but Jumpstart is also a very important feature. Like for example, like if you have, it's something similar to Bedrock, where you have like we saw like it's a marketplace of different models that Bedrock offers. It's similar to that. SageMaker also offers a lot of foundation models that you can integrate with. It will have like hundreds of models that you can integrate with SageMaker. For example, if I want a Hugging Face, so I can just look for a Hugging Face model here.
Hey,
Ramya,
Ramya, Zeba has a
yeah,
hand up.
Zeba has a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Zeba.
Hi. My domain just got ready, and it already create a user by default. Is that okay?
That's fine, yeah. But
Okay.
it just see that on the user, let me just go back. So on the user, just see the policies though. If you see policies, which is the SageMaker execution policy, so it should have that. So yeah, so user policy, user profiles, and if I go to, so if this is the user that got created, so you would see something like execution role here. So this is important. So this is basically, it's kind
I
of,
have that, yeah.
you have it, right? It's like if you create a file, so you have to give some permissions, right, for executions for it to run. So this is pretty much, that's what it does. And if you had noticed, this would have created by default. I mean, this is not something that you customize, so it just creates by default.
Okay.
So as long as you have these, you're good.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries, no worries. Okay, so I was talking, let me go back to Jumpstart, because this is a very important feature to have used this jumpstart for one of my projects, AI projects. It was super useful actually. So here in the foundation model, say you can just search for Hugging Face or whatever you want to, based on your use case. So based on your use case, you can pick any of the model that you want. Say for Mistral, like if you go new models, and if I open the model in the studio, right? So whenever you are trying to open the model in a studio, it will ask for a domain. So that's a domain that you just created. And no user profile. So I'll just go use the other one. And so this is gonna, it will have a drop down with the domain that you want to select, with the user profile that comes with the domain. So you would just pick that, and then you would go ahead and open the studio. And the studio will have, all these. So I actually selected the Hugging Face Mistral. So if you see here, it gives you the entire information, what this model is for. Model, it has certain links for deploying the model. So just like with the click of a button, you can just deploy the model. For some models, you will not have an option to train, because there are certain limitations, because if you're using a free tier, there are certain restrictions that SageMaker has when it comes to training a model or deploying. So just keep that in mind. But for some of the models, you would see both train and deploy enabled. For some of the models, you would see just the deploying. So just for now, just know that this one, if you have any custom data set, you can, and if you have this train button enabled, then you can just use it to train the model with data set, and then you would use the deploy to deploy it. It has all these options. So it is just like very, very easy to use. It basically just does the whole entire life cycle with just a click of a button. So it's also like almost like code free. So that jumpstart is, so something like, it's a very, very nice feature in SageMaker. Let me go back to where I was, which is the Jupyter. So SageMaker Studio, if you go here, I don't know if I went back to, let me go back, SageMaker. Okay, so SageMaker Studio. Okay, so SageMaker Studio, so okay, yeah, so back to this one. So where I was, right? So I was talking about domains, and you have the user created. So once you have it done, so click on this one, and you have the user profile. So click on that, and you would see here on the right, you have a launch button. And if you click on this, you would see Studio, Canvas. So today we're just going to focus on Studio. So I just go ahead and open that. So once you have, I'm sorry about that. So once you have the Studio open, right? So you would see something like this one, okay? So on the left, you would see the different IDs that it offers. It uses, it has Jupyter Lab, Canvas, code editor, something like the Visual Studio IDE that we use. So it's something similar to that. So ML Flow, so it gives the user different applications that you can use. Jupyter Lab it's very popular for machine language learning. If you're not familiar with that, so let me just open this Jupyter Lab, and I can go through some of the features here. So click on Jupyter Lab. When you click on Jupyter Lab, you will see something called Create Jupyter Lab Space on the top left, okay? So here, when you click on this, it gives you an option to either create a private space or a domain space. It's just very similar to what I talked about for domain, right? It's nothing but an environment, an IDE environment that SageMaker offers. So for example, if you're just working with a team, so you can just use this option, share with my domain. So that will basically, if you have other team members, so if you have other team members in your project, if you use this option, they can basically use this space And so multiple people can just share their code and use the same space. So that is this option. Private, if you're just using if this account is just for you, you just want to use a private space, you will go ahead with that. And this is also pretty much straightforward. So you just put the space name, the Jupyter Lab space name, what options you want, and just create space. And that will create a space for you. It's going to take a little bit of time, probably like 5 minutes for the space to get created. And when you configure the space, right, you will see some options for the instance size. So let me, so here I've already created a space. It takes like 5 minutes for the space to come up. And you would see this stop action and an open action here. So if you see a stop action here, it means that your space is up and running and it's ready for use. And you have the status it's running. Here the type is shared. And so what I'll do is I'll open the space, and I can wait for a couple of minutes if somebody is trying to launch the space.
Ramya, hi.
Mhm.
Sorry. You were saying something about the instance type. So should we just leave it to default, or is there something specific you want?
Yes. The instance type is basically the type of instance that you're going to go with. So if you're going to launch a very lightweight model, okay, so you will just go with the medium or a small, which is the first or the second or third, fourth option that you will see. So those are basically used for very lightweight models that requires less number of GPUs, pretty much doesn't use any GPUs, like it will very less memory utilization, space utilization, CPU utilization. So I would suggest, if you're somebody who's trying to explore AWS, I would definitely suggest you to go with a small or a medium, not more than that, because there is a pricing for every model that you kick off. And the more, if you go for a larger model, a heavyweight model, which utilizes more space, so it is something like you would end up paying like $10 an hour or $20 an hour. So it just depends on what it is. But the ones that are medium, the first three options that it lets you choose, so those are very minimal. And if you want to look at the SageMaker pricing, I would suggest, like, every service that you're going in AWS, like you're exploring AWS, you're trying to launch some instances, definitely keep the pricing in mind. Because it does say it's free, but there are few options. Like if you have like 10 instances that you kick off, you would see your credit card getting charged. It will be minimal. Probably it depends on the instance size that you're kicking off. If it's just a small or medium, it could be like, a few cents an hour, something like that. But do be just mindful of that, because it does charge based on the storage resource, based on storage consumption and all that. And for every, Sage, if you go for a SageMaker service, you would see a pricing option, which is listed on the bottom side of the page. And you would see that in every AWS service. Bedrock has it. So you will see a pricing link on the bottom of the page, and that will give you like a details on the pricing, like how much would it cost for spinning up a small instance, how much would it cost for spinning up a medium, large. So just be mindful of that. So after the space is kicked off, right? So you would launch the space, and here is where you will land in. So here, if you see, so it gives an option for notebook, for launching like a notebook, console, or a terminal, which is nothing but the Ubuntu or the Unix terminal that we use. So you just, based on your comfort, you can go anything you want. But I would highly suggest, for machine learning, for machine language models, definitely go with a notebook. It's very, very, let me launch a notebook. I can show you how it looks like. Okay. So remember the link that I gave. So that link has the entire code, and this is what this one is. This is what it's just a copy paste of that code. So this is what, so for people who are not very familiar with Jupyter Lab or a notebook, it's basically used for machine language learning. Something that, the Visual Studio that we typically use. So that's you use IDE for basically a traditional code development, right? You put a chunk of code and you execute the code, run it, but the machine language model development, deployment, training is something different. And I would explain the code as we go, but you would see that it is very different from the traditional code development. And for instance, like if you have, you might have to create a data set, you will have to clean up the data set. So if you have like a bunch of data set and you want to drop some columns or rows from the data, some unneeded data that you want to clean up, so you'd have to do that. So a Visual Studio will not help with that. So Notebook basically what it does is it provides like a cells. Okay, so if you see over here, this is like 1 cell, 2 cell. So it actually gives a more flexibility for the user to interact with the code. It's like a calculator. Like in a calculator, you put like 2 + 2 and then you run it and you get a execution result. So it's something very similar to that. You basically put your code in each of the cell, and you can just run these in individual cells. And you can also run the whole file as well. It will just run the entire cell in your file. So if you go to click on run, so it actually gives some options that you can explore. So it will just say run all cells, run all markdown cells and all that. So that is one very good advantage of using a notebook. So if you're using SageMaker AI, if you're trying to deploy models, definitely go with a notebook, which is what typically is used by people who work with model development and engineering. So that is one advantage of this. The second advantage is, like, for example, you have a data set, okay, and you want to see in a chart, you want to plot your data set in a chart to see if, like, okay, how much concentrated is your data set. So so that's something that is used for machine language model as well. So that is very easy to run in this kind of an IDE. So where you would just run it and it will show your chart here when you run the code. So that's something that it's difficult in a traditional software development IDE. So those are a few advantages of using a Jupyter Space notebook. And so if you see the one that I shared, it has the entire code, and I will explain the code as we go. So once you have, I can also pull up the code that I have. So so the first step is checking if all your Python version is all set up. Remember, like in other development IDEs, you would have to just install Python, install pip and all that. But here in the notebook instance, it's all integrated because it comes with a package. So that's one very useful feature of using a Jupyter Lab. So it already comes with Python. Now the world actually now only it only speaks in the Python language. So it just comes integrated with all these nice features. So go ahead and run this. If you already have, just copy, paste whatever the notepad I've shared. The first step, so you can just copy and paste it in the first cell, and I'll tell you how to run it. So once you have copy pasted it, so here it's just a very simple command where you just checking for Python version, and it's just checking for the installed packages, and it's just going to upgrade your SageMaker. So that's what this one does. Now, to run the cell, what you would do is you can either use a keyboard shortcut. If you're using Mac, what I do is I use Shift and Return, or else you would see an execute button here. So you can run that, and that will run the cell that you have currently selected. So so here for the current selection, so I just go ahead and run it. And then you would see this output over here. So once you run that piece of code, you would see an output like this. Okay, and let me know if you're stuck with something or if you're seeing some errors or something. Okay, so once you run the first piece of code, which is basically just checking for the version and all that. So the second piece of code is it's just checking for the SageMaker. I'm just making sure that like if I have the correct execution role for running this code. So here I'm just running that. So I'm just getting the role. It just fetches the IAM role that is configured with this Jupyter space, and it's gonna print what role I have. So that's what the second piece of code does. So just copy paste it, just paste it in a cell. So either do a shift return to run it, or you can just run it here. So you would see an output like this. So once you run this one, you would see an output like this. Okay. The next one is it just importing the libraries. It's importing now. What we are talking today is specific to machine language, and pandas, NumPy. So these are like very important libraries that are used for machine language. So NumPy is basically set of Python libraries that the machine understands, and pandas is something that the user understands. So pandas, like most of the libraries that you would see over here, what we write in the code are actually a pandas code for machine language. So what it does is it imports the pandas modules, and internally it calls the NumPy libraries to run the machine language code. So here I'm importing, and here I'm importing pandas, NumPy, and also I'm going to use a linear regression model, which is one of the ML algorithms that is used. So I'm going to use that to train the model, okay, with the data set. So that's what it's doing it here. It just basically imports all the packages that is needed for running this code. Okay, so that's the third step. The next step, so I'll just explain a basic use case here. So what it's trying to do is the use case is basically if you have like years of experience and the salary. So I'm just providing the model, the machine with years of experience, the salary, and I'm just telling the model that, okay, hey, this is just a sample data set that I'm going to give. I'm just saying that, okay, so here, these are the years of experience and these are the salaries. Now, the machine doesn't know what years of experience's salary is, right? So I'm trying to use a model that will predict the salary based on the years of experience. That's what I'm trying to let the model do, okay? So that's the use case, very simple use case. I just want a model where I'm just gonna give the model some data there. I'm gonna throw in some salaries, I'm gonna throw in some years of experience. And we know as a human, we know that, okay, so if the years of experience is less, the salary would be less. If the years of experience is more, typically the salary would be more, right? So now I'm just gonna train, I'm gonna let the model or the machine know of this data set. And what it's gonna try to do is it's gonna get trained with this one, and all its understanding is, okay, so if the less the number on the x-axis, the less the salary, okay, on the y-axis. So that's what it's understanding basically. I'm just saying, okay, these are the numbers I'm throwing in, and what it does is the machine language, it uses the specific algorithm that you're mentioning in the code, and that algorithm will basically so understand what numbers are provided, and it will try to find a relationship between these numbers. So it's going to understand, okay, so if it is 1 year, so if the number is 1, it means the salary would be less, and if the number of years is 10 or 20 or whatever, the salary is going to be more. So that's the way it predicts, the algorithm predicts. So that's what here this code does, is basically I'm just giving a training data. Very simple data, not a complex more data, just a data of like 10 numbers, just for the machine to know, okay, so this is just to find the relationship between the different data that I'm giving. And I'm just going to have the model predict based on, I'll just throw in as an output, I'm just going to throw in the years of salary and let the model predict what the salary, the years of experience, and let the model predict what the salary would be. Okay, so once this is done, you will see an output here. Okay, so this is basically just spinning the output like, okay, this is what I'm training the model with, years of experience, salary. So once that is through, the next one is, So this is where I'm telling the model what regression algorithm that it would use, what machine language algorithm it's going to use. So I'm just saying, just use the linear regression. And there are different, different regression ML algorithms that are being used, right? So there's neural networks, there's linear regression. There are pretty much three or four types of algorithms that are used. So in certain use cases, you would actually try to use all the algorithms and see which one gives you a better prediction than the other. So it's more like a trial and error to see like, okay, which machine language model would fit your use case better. So that is more like a trial and error. But just for the workshop code, I'm just going to use the linear regression algorithm for today. Also note that I'm just using on my data set, I just got 2 columns, which is salary and years of experience. I am not going through the process of data cleaning and all that. So for example, like if your a data set has like, say, the height and weight of a person, that is not needed to do a salary prediction, right? So that is where the data cleanup comes. So if your data set has anything that is not needed for model prediction, then you just get rid of those data that is not needed. So that's where the cleaning up of data comes. So for now, I'm just using these 2, just the years of experience and the salary in the data set. Okay, so once you have this one, you're just saying, okay, this is my x-axis, y-axis, this is the algorithm that I'm going to use. Okay, the next thing would be saving the model to a file. So it is basically just when you're doing a model deployment. So it just you're just saying that, hey, dump this model into a specific place. The next thing would be, I think, one second, there is a file that I shared actually, which is the inference.py file. I don't know if it should be somewhere. Let me just open this file. So this is something that you would need in order to run the whole code. So I have this one in the code in the notepad that I shared. So what you would do is basically you would create a file and just copy paste that code that I provided here. So this is actually the main file basically, which would run the model and it will do the prediction. So if you have to create a file, just go ahead and, if you right click on here, it will give you an option to new file. So you just click on new file and then you would just copy paste whatever is provided for the inference.py. Okay, so go ahead and do that if it's not done, but there's something that you would need definitely in order to run the whole code.
That's step number 8, I think, in your script.
Yeah, so yes. Yeah, so but you can create the file, keep it ready. Yeah, so over here, and you're just gonna create and save it. Actually, saving is not needed. Basically, this one good thing about Jupyter Space is it just saves the file every few seconds. So you do not have to manually save it at all. So just copy paste, your inference.py file is ready. So once you're done with this one, right, save model to file. Once you're done with that one, that's the next code is what it does is it's just saying, okay, so, this is the execution role that I'm going to use. This is a session of the SageMaker, and these are all defaults that it is taking. So, but you just have to put that in the code. And you're saying, okay, use this role and use this model. So what basically it will do is, it will create a model and it will upload to S3. So remember, S3 is the one that I mentioned earlier, where everything, it's basically storage for AWS. So your model will get uploaded. When you run this piece of code, the model actually will get uploaded to this S3 bucket. Okay, so here it's nothing but it will take a default bucket and it will just use this folder that you have already configured here, salary predictor, and it will create the model here in this bucket. Okay, so that's what this code is doing. So it's uploading the model into S3. So once that is done, the next piece of code is basically importing the model. So whatever you have saved into S3, you're just importing it along with the data set. And what basically SageMaker does is it creates it needs anything that is imported. It needs it in the form of a tar file. So that's what you're doing here, importing the tar file. So you're just creating that creating a tar file of that model. And on the next piece of code, what you're trying to do is you are just saying the model path. So you're defining the model path where the tar file, where this code needs to take the tar file from which bucket it needs to get from. So those are all actually our default settings. So that will come from here. So whatever settings, whatever you're configuring it with. So that's what this code does. So here, this was what the output would look like. Model uploaded to this one. This is the tar file. So once that is done, it is gonna call this algorithm. So it's called a scikit-learn algorithm that is basically part of pandas. So what it basically does is, this is actually the main file. So it is gonna run the inference.py, which we are already created here. Okay, so what it's trying to do is it will train the data set. It is going to use the inference.py file to basically run the whole data set on the model. So that's what it will do in this step. So okay, so once that is true, so once you have the data set, the model actually has the data set already trained with. The next thing is basically the final step, which was nothing but the predictor. Okay, so the predictor equal to this one. So this is the last step that happens. But just a FYI, in this code, this is the main code, which is basically deploying the model and creating an endpoint in SageMaker. Okay, so this step will take you like 20 minutes. I'm just showing it here because I already have the output. So I just want to show how it looks like. But typically when you run this code, it's going to take around like 20 to 25 minutes for you to run it. Okay. But you would see the output something like this. So it's just saying like, okay, creating the model with this name. I have created an endpoint over here. And this is the name. And if it is successfully created, you would see something like, dash, 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 an exclamation, which means that the model is successfully created. If it has errored out, then you would see an appropriate error message, a bunch of messages popping up. Okay, that would be around like 20 minutes in 20 minutes. So it will, even if it is errored out, if it has successfully deployed, the average time is about 20 minutes for this code to run. But this is what it would look like if the code is successfully created, if the model is successfully created. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check for the status. So I know that, okay, the code is run. I see that it's completed, but I want to see if the model is deployed and it's up and running. So this is what I'm doing here. So this is what this code does. Is basically it is retrieving the status of the model that you just deployed in the endpoint. Now here it says in service. Okay, endpoint status is in service. Now if you end up with some errors, it would say failed. Okay, so here, since the status is in service, I know that, okay, so the model is up and running. It's time to use test data to see if how it run, or if it makes the correct prediction with that test data. So that's what it's doing over here. So this is, I'm just querying the model with the test data. I'm just saying, okay, so what is the predicted salary for a 5 years person? And it will, this is the output that it will show basically. So yeah, so this is the final output that you will see. Okay, so then your model is deployed as an endpoint, and okay, so it's making a prediction over here. Okay, so it's just a simple, very lightweight model for you to just get started with SageMaker, and it doesn't really consume a lot of storage and resources. In case if you run into some errors, which likely you would, and always it is better to run into errors than see a happy path, right? Because only when you run into errors, you would try to triage what's going on, and that's when you would learn, okay, more about it. So I will also tell you where to go in case if you run into some errors. So there's something called CloudWatch that AWS has. Let me go back here. Just kick me out. Okay. So people who are not familiar with CloudWatch, it is where all the logs are stored, okay, for any services that is integrated with AWS. So this is where you would see for any log. In case if there is any issues, you would come here and see the logs. So just you do the same thing on the search bar. You can just go for CloudWatch. You just type CloudWatch and you will come to the screen. And also what you will need is, let me go create a duplicate. Okay, so you would need the endpoint name, okay, for that. So say, for example, your SageMaker, sorry, your endpoint actually got failed. Okay, so let me go here. I think this one was the one. User profiles. Okay, yeah. So if I go to SageMaker, see endpoints somewhere here. Yeah, endpoints. So when you go to SageMaker down here on the left side, you would see something like inference or expanded. You would see endpoints. So over here, if you see like, some of the instances are failed, right? So, and here, the back here is, so there's one instance that is running. So now if you want to triage, if you want to investigate, what is going on with this failed instance, you would have to get the instance ID basically. So for example, here, this 222 instance has got failed. So I would just go here and I would copy this ID, okay? I see that it's in failed status. Now I want to know, okay, why it got failed. So I just use this 222 ID and I would go to CloudWatch. And for every instance, I think I cleaned up some CloudWatch error logs, but for every instance that it creates, you will see that it has created a log group. So basically you would go on the left side on CloudWatch, you would go to logs, and there's something called log groups. So you would go there, and based on the failed instances, so for example, if 600 has failed, so I'd just go here, you would click on there and you would see these, it will let you see all the log errors. So this will pretty much give you an idea, okay, why it got failed. So in my code earlier, so if you see over here, not implemented error, it throws some error. So I had to fix that in the code. So you would try to, you would find sometimes issues when deploying, but this is a place where you would come for seeing, okay, what needs to be done, how to fix it. Yeah, so that's one good thing to know when exploring SageMaker in AWS. That's pretty much that I wanted to cover today. So it would just, it's just a very basic workshop that will help you get started with SageMaker AI. Yeah, so if you have any questions, let me know. I think a few minutes here, so yeah. Just open the floor for any questions.
Seba has a question.
Hope it didn't confuse you a lot. Hopefully, I hope there was some insights.
No,
Seba.
this is great. Go ahead, Seba.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. I was able to run it till the deployment part of it. And I have a question, like you talked about endpoints. What are those exactly? Is it like an entryway to access your model which has been deployed on AWS?
Exactly. Yeah. So for example, yeah, like, you deployed a model, okay? And I want to use that model. So I can train that model more. I want to fine tune that model. So what I would do is I would go to this endpoints, so that it's near, it's in the inference, right? So I would go here, I would go to endpoints, and so this is where I would come. So any endpoint that you create, whether it's a failed endpoint, whether it's an in-service, whether it's up and running, so you would come over here. So it basically says, okay, your endpoint is up and running, and it's for, you can use, some other person can use it, and you can fine tune the model or do whatever you want with that. So that's what the endpoint is basically. It's just it's kind of a URL that it associates with every model deployment. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I have another question. So, why did you save the model to S3, like model and the data to S3 if there are endpoints already there? Like, which is
So endpoints is basically that comes after the model is deployed. Okay, that's like the final stage.
yeah.
So in order for the model to work with a training set, right? So you're you're training the data and everything. So for that to happen, that model has to be saved somewhere, and that's where it goes to the S3. So that step is basically saving the model into S3. Okay, so but the endpoint is only happens at the final stage where you have trained the model and then you're now ready to deploy it. as an endpoint, that's when it comes. And then once the endpoint is created, you can just use the endpoint to run an API with any test data that you want and just get some predictions out of it.
So once I have that endpoint defined, I can delete the S3 bucket?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay.
And definitely, there's one thing that I forgot to add. A SageMaker, any AWS, it does charge you for every instance that's up and running. Okay, so in case if you don't need that endpoint anymore, go ahead and delete it. So if you're not using it at all, go ahead and don't leave it running though, because you will ultimately get charged for it. So if you're done with the endpoint, just go ahead and delete it. But there is, I think I have mentioned a code for it. That's a last step if you have to delete the endpoint. If you want to just let it running, that's okay. But you will get charged for any running instance based on how much resource it's utilizing. Any other questions?
Can you refer back to the model? So once the endpoint is deleted, but your model was saved, right, in S3, and let's
S3
say,
bucket? Yeah, it's not really.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's not much use. So so what happens is it's kind of runs a dependency. Okay, so if you're deleting an endpoint, definitely that endpoint is using some storage, right? It's using some storage, it's using some network. So sometimes you might have to delete the S3 storage as well, else it will not let you delete. Yeah, so it is, hey, I have something that I'm using, so you'd have to delete that, the network utilization or the VPC, something like that before you can delete the final endpoint.
So delete both of them as a safety step, right?
Yes, that's
okay,
great.
Yeah, or else you don't want to get a $300 bill.
There's actually one thing that AWS offers is a budget that you can set a budget constraint with AWS. So that is also good to know, because you can just go for AWS budget setup. You can set up like, okay, this is your $20 is a budget per month. You can set it up. And what it does is if you're trying to consume more than that, it's say for an instance that you just left it running and you forgot about it. So if it is trying to consume more than $20, it sends you a notification to your email or a phone number, just letting you know that it is crossing beyond your budget. It will not stop you from running or using that endpoint for sure, but it will just send you a notification. So that's something good to have. Yes, Ivan.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Is it normally one endpoint one model per endpoint, or can you have one endpoint for multiple? Can one endpoint host multiple models for performance?
Yes, it's usually one-to-one. So it will be like one endpoint and one model. And if you're using like a multiple models where you are, like one model is integrated with the other, it's basically 2-3 endpoints that you will be dealing with.
Oh, so it won't host two models in one endpoint? Okay.
Yeah, Ganesh, go ahead.
So if I can, the way that I understood it, tell me if I'm wrong, is you create an environment on SageMaker AI where you actually upload the training data and the test data. You train the model, which you then are saving in S3, and then you're launching an endpoint with the model that was saved in S3. And the first part that you're actually training the model, is that running on an environment that is being charged for that compute time?
No, it doesn't. The training doesn't, if you're just going to train the model, no, it doesn't get charged. It's just the instance that comes up at the end where you create the endpoint. That is where it starts charging. So if you're just running like a training job, no, it doesn't charge you for that, because it's just like you're just running a piece of code. And it doesn't use utilization. Yeah, like it is not using any storage or something. But
it probably has a limit, right?
Yeah,
how much compute you can use during that time.
Yeah, it doesn't really use a lot of compute resources for training and or uploading the training set into S3, but definitely the model endpoint is basically definitely uses resources there. So that's when it starts charging. Yeah.
All right. So now you said that it takes about 20 minutes to launch the endpoint.
Yes.
And then from that point on, any other data scientist can connect to that endpoint and continue training, fine-tuning, or predicting from that model.
Correct. That's correct.
And that is done. So it is some sort of an API at that point.
It is a source. Yes, that is API. So if you are familiar with Bedrock actually, like once you create an endpoint, I can just go and use the endpoint basically in a UI interface, and I can, chat with the model deployment. I can do that all in UI. But in SageMaker, it actually offers APIs. It doesn't offer a UI interface like as in Bedrock. That's the difference between Bedrock and SageMaker. In SageMaker, even the predictor that I ran, the code that I ran, so that is an API as well. It's basically giving a data as an API to the endpoint, and it's making a prediction. So which is the last step over here, which is where it is doing a prediction over here. It's basically an API. So that's how it's used in SageMaker.
Okay, so then to reiterate, you launch the endpoint in SageMaker AI, and then you can use that endpoint in Bedrock.
Not in Bedrock. So once you have, so this is like totally in SageMaker. So Bedrock is different. And this is what we just spoke about today is totally SageMaker. In Bedrock does give you like a little bit higher flexibility in terms of using a UI interface to run any predictions once a model is deployed. But in SageMaker, it's mostly APIs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the endpoint takes 20 minutes to launch, but then you are charged for compute, and you decide what level of compute you can actually have on that.
Correct. Yes. Correct. Yeah. So it depends on, like if it is like a small model instance, it's a very lightweight small model instance. So you'll be charged accordingly. And if you're launching like a heavyweight, which is using large amounts of GPU, you'll be charged according to that. So it's just based on the compute resource.
And how's the permissions handled? So who can actually access that API, that endpoint?
So the permissions are handled. So basically when you spin up the Jupyter space, right? So you're spinning up the domain, you're creating a user profile here. So at the time when you create the user profile, you will have those options. So let me go here.
So the users need to be members of the domain at that point in order to use it. A user in a different domain cannot use that same endpoint.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
No worries. Any more questions?
No, this was amazing. Ramya, thank you so much. And I think just a clarification for folks, I know that we had initially said that we'll be deploying LLMs. There was a small change in plan. So this was like a linear regression model that Ramya, shared with us. And I think it's even better because everybody keeps talking about LLM, but you actually learn, about like a traditional machine learning model where actually, you can predict outputs. So just wanted to clarify that. But Ramya, this was amazing. I certainly loved it. So yeah, really, really thank you for your time and for having such a wonderful session for our audience.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here. And I thoroughly enjoyed sharing what I know. I hope it's a little insightful, and stay curious, keep exploring, enjoy AWS. I love AWS. So yeah, enjoy.
Yeah, I'm a fan as well now. Thank you so much. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.